In the world of FPV, new products come out so fast and furious it can be hard to keep up with them. And that's why me and my co-host, It's Blunty, get together every month to tell you about the newest products in FPV, give you our off-the-cuff, usually uninformed, sometimes entertaining opinions, and at the end, we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to give away some of these products to a lucky winner. Blunty, how you doing this month? Good to see you again.
Good, Joshua. How's it going?
Going very well. Let's start us off with one of the hottest products this month, which is
the HDZero 1-watt VTX. This is the freestyle VTX we've been waiting for a while, and is finally up for pre-order and will be shipping pretty soon. So that is pretty exciting to see out there. And we're starting to get some videos from the pre-release stuff. But hopefully, yeah, they'll start shipping soon, and we'll finally start to see it at a lot of users' hands.
Yeah, this is a big deal. HDZero has a lot of promise and a lot of potential. And for racers, it's actually delivering on that potential. But one of the things that I feel has held it back from more widespread adoption is that the video transmitters have maxed out at 200 milliwatts. There was a 500 milliwatt one, but it's not widely available, and I don't even think they're still making it. So this 1-watt VTX, like there have been people showing tests that show it to have better range and penetration than like a 1.5 watt TBS Unify. And if that actually bears out in real life, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to consider is just that the transmission style is different. So there's going to be like pros and cons, I think, on both sides. And one thing that I think is interesting that a lot of people don't consider before you fly it is just that you don't get that rolling and scrolling of the screen. So there's a lot of times where even though you got all kinds of snow or the screen gets blocky for a frame or two, it comes back to that full screen and you're not waiting that 10, 20, 30 frames, sometimes even longer, for that roll to like catch up and that sync lock to hit again.
Big downside of this one, the size. It's got 30 millimeter mounting, but it has, it's actually significantly big. Well, I say significantly, it's closer to 40 millimeters in size. And that means it's going to be a little bit of a struggle to fit in some frames, not all, but some.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge for some people, but I think some people will be able to slap it right in the back. It just may take special considerations that you wouldn't typically be concerned about for a VTX. So I think people, I imagine this is around the same size as an air unit. I actually haven't checked the specs. But for me, like I imagine that's pretty doable for a lot of frames. So yeah, and I know we're seeing a lot more frames come out that are supporting this.
Yeah, you're not going to fit it on the 20 millimeter mount in the rear of a typical freestyle frame. What I've heard some people doing is they'll get a 30 millimeter ESC and a 20 millimeter flight controller. They'll put the flight controller in the back where the VTX would normally go, and then they'll put this on top of the ESC where the flight controller would normally go, and it hangs over the sides a little bit, but it still gets the job done. The other kicker that I think surprised some people is that it only takes 2 to 4S input, not up to 6S. So if you're running 6S, you're going to need a voltage regulator, and a fairly substantial one, 15 watts.
It does ship with one, I'll say that. So they send you one with it, and then you basically it's like the additional BEC that you would buy. So if you are running 6S, you could slap it right on there.
Yeah, a little annoying to have to wire up a BEC, though. I know a lot of people are going to be annoyed at that.
Yes, absolutely.
Alrighty, we have one other sort of hot product that I wanted to put here right up at the front, and this is going to be a product for people who are doing cinelifters, which, okay, fair enough, a lot of people aren't. But if you are into cinelifters, this is a naked Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera being manufactured by HaloRC. Are you familiar with the Blackmagic camera, Blunty?
Yeah, it's kind of seems to be lately, especially a popular cinelifter camera, basically for the reasons we're looking at here, because it's possible to tear it down and get it into these cinelifter frames. And it's seems like it'd be a really good trade-off for like price and quality and weight and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema has always been a really good trade-off for people looking for they don't want to spend $10, $15, $20, $30,000 on a RED camera, but they still want something closer to a proper cinema camera. And Blackmagic, I think it comes in the several $1,000s range, which is budget. And now, for cinema cameras anyway, and now HaloRC has figured out how to tear them down, or is tearing them down for you. I don't think they invented this method, did they? Someone else came up with this.
We saw, yeah, we looked at a frame system that was using this mounting method, but it was kind of do it yourself. You buy all the parts, similar to how they're doing. There's a little kit you can buy, but that was like a whole frame kind of build around it. And yeah, now they're basically offering. They're saying, hey, if you don't want to do all that work, if you don't want to buy the camera and try to piece it all together and stuff, now we're offering a packaged version of it, so you can buy it all packaged.
Yeah, very cool. And this, I asked the Chris Bloods, the owner of HaloRC, and he said basically this is a standard way that cinelifter frames are adopting of mounting the camera. So there is a particular frame that this camera will mount on today, but there may be more going forward. The next product, Blunty, what do we got coming up next?
Well, Runcam has decided to hop into the action cam market in another way with the new Runcam Thumb. And they saw the form factor and style of the Insta360 Go, and they're like, "Hey, let's make something similar, but way more. I guess I don't know what you want to call it. I don't necessarily think it's like super cheap like build, but it is like a much lower value bracket.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's less expensive for sure. It's $55.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's basically like they basically scaled down all the specs, right? So they can sell you a 10 gram, basically it's 9.8 grams, little action camera for smaller quads.
The big question, of course, is going to be, how's the image quality?
It seems pretty good for a $55 camera. I think it already supports gyro flow. Just the Runcam is good about supporting those outputs for their gyro sensors and including those on their cameras now. I think one of the big things I would take away from this is like if you're really desperate for something, you don't want to spend a couple $100, this is like what you can get versus like maybe like a Runcam 5 Orange. Maybe this is the easier form factor for you. And I think this is going to be like half that price. I think Runcam 5 Orange is around $100. And then the other thing is like, to me, this is going to be a good platform for the future. Because this is like aiming at a light camera that has power-only inputs with no battery, slimmed down. So once they've kind of got this figured out, I feel like we're going to see that step up. Maybe for 20 or 30 more bucks, we'll get a Thumb 2 or Thumb 3 with much better specs, and we kind of bridge that gap much better. And I think that's where we're going to see like really like that hardcore value come in. Hopefully they can find that.
Okay, let's get into the categories now. And before we do that, I do want to let you know there are links down in the video description to all of these products. They are affiliate links. That means when you click that link and then make any purchase at the affiliated store, I get a small commission. It's an easy way for you to support the channel, and it doesn't cost you anything. The other thing I want to say is that there are timestamps in the timeline and in the video description. So if you are looking for a specific product, or if you're just getting tired of hearing us talk about one product, you can easily skip ahead to something you're more interested in. The giveaway information will be in the last chapter, so if you want to just skip to that, I understand. Next up, we're going to look at flight controllers and ESCs, new flight controllers and ESCs that have come out this month. Where should we start, Plenty?
Well, we've got a couple of AIOs here. Maybe we can kind of look at them and compare a little bit and contrast. We've got the Flywoo Goku F745, 40 amp. Then we've got a Foxeer Reaper F745, 45 amp. And these look to be two new, steps into the AIO market.
Very similar. They have the same processor, the F745 processor, so they're going to be fine to run Betaflight 4.3, at full capabilities. One's a 40 amp, one's a 45 amp ESC. The difference there, I think, is 5 amps is just a paper difference. One is BL-Heli32, one is BL-Heli-S. Does that matter? Should we care?
I personally don't. I don't know that I would worry too much. You're just paying a little bit extra for that, for that fee, and I think you start to see that come out in here. I think it's $5 extra for that license fee for BL-Heli32. So we do see a $20 gap in these flight controllers. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to compare.
Now, BL-Heli32 has features like variable PWM frequency, which can give better performance under some conditions. Not a must-have, but a nice-to-have. Some of that gap can be closed by flashing your BL-Heli-S ESC with BlueJ firmware. I've got a video about how to do that. So if you do end up with a BL-Heli-S one, there's a link in the video description to that video, and you could check that out. Definitely. Are you running BlueJ on all your ESCs, your BL-Heli-S ESCs?
Yeah, pretty much. It was BL-Heli-M for a long time, and now it's BlueJ. So.
Okay. Any other specs we should be concerned with?
It looks like 45 amps versus 40 amps, and the Reaper is $20 less. So I was kind of trying to see, if there's anything in particular that's less. It looks like the Reaper has 5 UARTs versus the Flywoo has 7. They both look like they both have a black box. Is that right?
Yeah, they look really comparable in a lot of ways, to be honest.
Yeah, very similar.
Pad layout looks. I've always liked that Goku has big, chunky pads for like the plus and minus. But the Goku, the other pads for the other wires are these tiny little edge launch pads, which a lot of people I think are going to, not everybody, but a lot of people are going to struggle to solder these. Whereas the Foxeer has more standard pads. Also difficult to solder to, but I think maybe a little easier. Yeah, I think of these two, I probably would lean towards the Foxeer, unless I really wanted BLHeli32. In which case I would go with the Goku. Here's another new flight controller that's come out recently. The T-Motor F7 Pro. T-Motor also makes pretty good flight controllers. What makes this one stand out is that it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So if you're using the SpeedyBee app on your cell phone, you can connect to it without having to plug in USB. Pretty full-featured. $80 is, like, sadly, not the most outrageous price I've seen recently for a flight controller in 2022.
Yeah, it looks like basically everything's there for what you would expect for that price. So
pit switch. We got a pit switch right here to turn the VTX off.
Yeah, we've got a DJI unit plug. You get eight motor outputs. Pretty standard.
Most of the solder pads are through hole for people who like through holes for better wire retention. Some people are going to like that. That's interesting. Their ESC plug has all 8 motor outputs in the ESC plug, which a lot of people would put 4 in the ESC plug and the other 4 would be solder pads or a second plug. So if you're building a hexacopter, this could be really appealing. And then, Blunty, before we go on to the next category, there's one other little thing I wanted to throw into this section. One of the problems people have with their flight controllers is they break the USB plug off of it. Or if you have a Cinewhoop or a big cinelifter, sometimes it can be difficult to get at the USB plug without opening the thing up. Ugh, so annoying. Catalyst Machine Works has this little micro USB remote access DIY set. It's basically 2 USB plugs that you can solder wires to, and you could basically extend your USB. This is also going to be useful if you break your USB, but the solder pads are still accessible. You could just solder one of these on and still access your flight controller. So just a little $5 thing that's going to help some people out.
All right, well, let's move on to bind and fly and plug and play quads. First up, we've got the GEPRC Mark 5.
What do we got here, Blunty? What stands out about this?
I would say one of the interesting choices they made is like the front camera guard bumpers are like way more extended than you typically see. So it looks like they're kind of handling like the front and the second standoff as like one whole piece.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's going to really box in that front end.
Right, definitely, for sure. I wonder if that'll like increase stability or if that's going to be a problem. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know that I've seen something quite like that.
Yeah, a lot of other frames like the Diatone Roma will have just the front be metal, and then they'll have a standoff here. It certainly is going to transmit. I mean, you can't reduce stress. You can only move it around. So, I mean, like, whereas on something like the Diatone Roma, you might see these screw holes here crack. Here, we're probably not going to see that. It's going to transmit that stress from a front impact, and maybe it'll do a really good job of spreading it out and avoiding any particular failure point. It's a really cool front end.
Yeah, it almost looks too like, because that top plate is separate on that piece. Like, it's almost like...
it is.
It's like stationary, it's like not stationary, but isolated, sort of.
And normally I complain about a split deck design, but in this case, I don't think you're compromising any strength because of the way that metal front end is.
Maybe that's part of the reason for that. It's like being able to have that split deck without having that compromise. So,
yeah, well, you don't have to take your action camera off to maintain it.
Yeah.
What's the weight? Anytime you got a big metal piece, you got to wonder about the weight. See if we can find that. 391 grams, including 3D print. That's respectable. I mean, you're going to be around 600 grams with a battery. And around, oh no, I'm sorry. You're going to be around 600 grams with a battery and then like close to 800 grams with a GoPro, depending on which, 760. So it's not a light quad. It's a chunky boy. Some people like chunky boys. 2107 or 2207. Oh, wait, 2107.5. What the frick motor is that? I thought it was 2207. It's 2107.5. It's like a little narrower and a little taller than usual. It's basically a 2207, so it's probably fine.
Yes. Close enough. Close counts.
30 grams. That's good. That's good. Receiver option. No receive. Oh, they're selling it with Express LRS available. Be still my heart.
Yeah, I think they make receivers, so they're able to slap them right in there. Pretty cool.
So good. $500. Oof, that hurts.
Yeah, that does hurt.
How much of that is just it's 2022 and everything is expensive and life is terrible? Let's look at the Nazgul Evoke.
Yeah, lately I assume that with everything. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Let's see. No receiver, 475. No receiver, 486. So it's comparable in price to the Nazgul Evoke.
Yep.
Nazgul Evoke has a lot going for it in terms of like, it's got a very clever design, but the 20 millimeter electronics in the Nazgul Evoke really kind of put me off. By all accounts, they're fine, but I just don't like it.
Next up, we've got the Firefly 1S Nano Baby, and we've looked at another version of the Nano Baby or something similar. I can't remember exactly how they named them.
There's a bunch of different versions.
Yeah, but this is like they're more like racing kind of freestyle faster version that they've made.
It's basically a 75 millimeter whoop without prop guards, so it's going to fly better, but you're not going to get the same performance as a 3-inch prop. Then again, on 1S, it's a little bit of a struggle to get the best performance. What's the weight?
Oh, there you go. On the left, there is the old version, the one we looked at before. The Nano Baby Dead Cat version was the one they had for a while for the long range. And then, yeah, the True X is the new one.
Yeah. What's the weight? Is there a weight?
22 grams? It says 22 grams.
22 grams.
So that's like a reasonable to light 75 millimeter. So, yeah.
Interesting. Well, so it's basically a 75 millimeter whoop, but it's going to fly better because it doesn't have prop guards. And you can order it with Express LRS pre-installed. Sweet.
Yeah.
Price $135. That's pretty reasonable. Oh, does it have some weird battery connector? Please don't have a weird battery connector. What is that?
I think the GNB is, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what's going to be the winner.
I'm going to have to buy all new batteries. Did that GNB make that?
Yeah, GNB made it to have basically a high performance connector that didn't cost you $1 a connector like Beta FPV.
So it's a replacement for the BT 2.0.
Yeah, hey, here's another high performance connector that's similar size and weight, but doesn't cost you to use.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I mean, $1 a battery on these little batteries does add up. Is that how much Beta FPV charges for the BT 2.0?
That at least seems to be the given premium. Like if you look at the comparisons between the same PH2 and BT2 batteries, they're almost always about $1 more.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, I guess I'm not annoyed then. I mean, I support that. All righty.
So one option for those GNB 27 connectors, at least currently, is Newbeedrone supporting them with the Nitro Nectar batteries. And we've talked about the Nitro Nectar Gold before, and it's excellent performance. It has less sag. It kind of runs almost like at a higher voltage, and they do great performance on whoops for the 1S. And now it looks like they're supporting those with 1S 300 milliamp hour with the GNB connector, and actually a new 2S version of the Nitro Nectar with 2 of those stack cells the same way with that GNB as well. So I think that'll be a good option for something like that quad.
That's pretty cool. I mean, a battery connector is only as good as the batteries you can get for it, and these Nitro Nectar cells are some of the best 1S cells available for little tiny whoops. So now we've got a bigger version for these toothpick-style quads with this GNB connector, and no compromises.
Yeah.
All right.
Also, something to mention, if you need a 2S BT2, this might be one of the ways you could get that, because you could pop that connector off and solder on a BT2, and I don't think there's any other non-molded version of that 300 milliamp hour battery.
Oh, nice. Next up, we have another Cinewhoop in the more modern style, the Holybro Kopis Cinewhoop 2.5 inch. And what makes this interesting, first of all, Holybro just makes a ton of great stuff, but this is a KISS flight controller in a Cinewhoop, which is better.
In a bind and fly. So if you were looking, if that's what you want, if that's what you're looking for, some FetTech action, FetTech Mini AIO, then you can get it in this Cinewhoop that you can pick up. So basically the same build or similar build to their previous options. Just with that KISS in there.
And this got DJI as well. That's pretty cool. Most people, I think, when they think of KISS, they think of freestyle. That's just where KISS sort of made its name. But there's no reason those same great flight characteristics can't translate over into a Cinewhoop. And kudos to Holybro for I think I've heard that Holybro actually manufactures the FetTech flight controllers. Do you have an opinion on whether that's true?
Interesting. I have not looked at enough or compared enough to know that, so I'm not sure.
Okay. That might make this make a little more sense if that was true. So, pretty cool.
I see.
And this Cinewhoop, I don't actually know a lot about this Cinewhoop itself, but Holybro's got a decent track record.
It's time for frames. So we looked at stuff with all put together. Now let's look at some of the pieces. And one of the pieces is frames. And we're going to look at Chris Rosser's new frames. He's got a couple up. We got one that's brand new and one that he set out for just a little while. We've got the AOS T3, his entry in the toothpick category, and we've got the AOS UL5, which is ultralight 5-inch option.
Oh my goodness gracious! He's got a lot of guts to take on Bob Ruge in the toothpick arena. That's what are you going to do better than Kebab FPV? You so full of yourself, Chris Rosser.
For those of you that don't know, AOS Art of Science is Chris Rosser's company, and his goal is to reduce the filtering needed as much as possible on your quad. So it might be a little bit heavier sometimes, or it might be a little bit harder to build, maybe stuff like that. But what you're going to get out of that is a no compromises version of a frame that has a lot better resonance profile than other frames will typically have. And that's what he's going here for on both these, especially the toothpick. He wanted to take out some of those resonances that people are used to and push them up. So that's what he did. And I think the frame actually ended up looking pretty cool based on that design.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's got this cool triangle design. Chris loves triangles, as most engineers do. And he's added triangles to the arms to help, presumably, improve the resonance characteristics. So if you're looking for a frame to build a toothpick on, it probably is worth a shot. The other one here is the AOS 5 UL5. How is this different from his normal AOS 5, which is his normal 5-inch frame?
He basically took the idea of the AOS 5 and then knocked out a couple of the things to make it more optimized for a smaller setup. So he basically, when he was doing all the rendering in the engine and testing and FEA analysis, it was all done with the smaller motors and different biblades and different frequencies expected and stuff like that.
So it's like, is it optimized for sub 250 5-inch going against something like an Omega 250?
Yeah, you do have to use, I think he uses a special 6S battery that's a little smaller. I think it's like a 450 or a 550. But if you compare, he's using steel hardware and he's around 67 grams. The Omega 250 says, I think, 51 grams on aluminum hardware. So it is a step up from that for sure.
Yeah. So for people who really care about sub 250, there may be a few more compromises here. But if you're just wanting a lightweight 5-inch and you're willing to go to 300 or 350 grams.
All right. Next up, we've got the brand new Apex frame. I think this has been anticipated for quite a while. The Apex has been around for a hot minute. And now we've got the new version of the Apex, which, as we know, is designed by collaboration with Mr. Steel. And they think is a small improvement on the traditional Apex.
Well, what have they changed between the original Apex?
It says it's a variation on classic Dead Cat, which keeps the front and rear motor aligned to Maintain the much-loved compressed X geometry. This keeps the frame balanced and flight performance is no longer compromised by modifying only the upper and lower main plates. We retain full compatibility with regular Apex arms, using standard 5-inch arms at the front and standard 6-inch arms at the back.
Oh, slick. So they've got a dead cat geometry. They've got an X geometry. Well, I don't know what to call it. The motors are laid out in a square, so you don't compromise handling, but the square is pushed backwards so the props stay out of view of the camera. That's pretty slick. Sort of a combination of a dead cat and an X. That's really slick.
They point out you could run a lower GoPro angle than you might expect because you can get those props out of way out of view, for the like you said, the box style still. So.
And for people who are flying professionally and they need to show their camera feed to like a director of photography or something, the props are out of view. And that can be, people say that the FPV pilots know that the props are not going to be in the GoPro's view, but not everybody knows that. So that's really slick. Little improvements. Price is about the same. And then the last one in this category is going to be the Cinner. Like a sinner? Someone who commits sins? Is it like Cinewhoop?
Yeah, I think something like that. This is kind of interesting frame. From DroneCoProductions, they've been doing the slam squirts for a while with the thinner squirt ducts, and they kind of pioneered that. So now they made the Cinner, which is basically their version of a 3-inch frame that they think is the way to go. So they've thinned down the hardware, changed the style and design of everything, and kind of moved everything around a little bit, created a pusher.
I like that the battery is sideways mounted. That can, especially on these little compact frames, that can make it easier to get it mounted and easier to route the cable. It can give different flight characteristics, which some people prefer. I am a little skeptical of we've got this carbon sheet here, which is holding the motors, right? We don't really have like arms per se, like big rigid arms. And normally you would fix that by having some kind of boxed in construction. But what we've got here is we've got this big sort of sheet here with the motors and props on it. And then on the bottom, we've got this, which is, in this render, it looks like it might be aluminum, but I don't think it is in real life, is it?
Not that I know of. Yeah, there's not it doesn't look like there's a finished printed one. But yeah, it looks like to me that it will be made out of TPU or plastic or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so my big concern is, and obviously the results will speak for themselves, and these guys make good quads, so maybe I'm just completely off base. But my big concern is if you were to show me this frame and the prop guards were not there, I would think, man, you really need, this is going to flop around. You're going to have terrible resonance problems because of this big sheet here. I would say, oh, it needs to be thicker or it needs to be braced somehow. And I'm not convinced that these prop guards are going to actually brace it. So I would be curious if it has bad resonance characteristics. That's about all it. No internal prop standoffs either, as far as I can tell. So interesting. I'd be curious to see how it flies. Well, from frames to motors, we've got 3 new motors that have come out this month that we think are worth your attention. And the first one is going to be the Farouk FPV Vroom 2505. Farouk FPV is, if you don't know him, look him up on YouTube. He's most known for Spang style.
Yeah, and he got with Rush FPV to make these motors just for exactly how he wanted them. So I think these are pretty cool. The 2505, some beefy motors at 2000 kV. But he does like his juicy Spang freestyle.
Now, it's interesting to think about Farouk's style, which Spang style requires a lot of very rapid throttle movements and very aggressive acceleration of the quad, and how that might translate to the kind of motor he would want to see, especially with the things that guys like Chris Rosser are telling us about motor performance. You know, Chris Rosser just got a test stand Blunty, and he's doing tests of different sizes and shapes of motors to see how they real-world results hold up to theory. One of the things he said was that the shape of a motor doesn't really affect its response. Like the idea that a 2306 has better low-end response and 2207 is, and it's basically the volume of the motor that matters most. So what is the volume of this motor?
So this motor is 2,700 cubic millimeters. So if we compare that with something like a 2207, a 2207 is going to come in at 2660. So, basically very similar, almost the same.
Yeah, very similar volume. That suggests it's going to have very similar torque. It's going to have a high KV. 6S 2000 KV is pretty high. So it's going to have high top end. It's going to be more difficult to modulate the throttle at the low end because it has such a high RPM range and high top end. And the 2505 sort of wider pancake style is going to give it better cooling than a taller, narrower motor, although it's questionable whether heat performance is what's holding these motors back. It does have a slightly larger stator volume, so it is going to have more torque than like a 2207. 37 grams, yikes. It's odd that somebody who is so interested in snappy style would be okay with such a heavy motor.
Yeah, that is a lot of motor weight.
All that motor weight out at the end of the arms sort of slows down the responsiveness of the quad to rotation. There's nothing else about the motor, like its bearing type, its aluminum alloy, and so forth. $21, 21 pounds, damn.
Just comparing, if you look at like an FPV cycle 25 millimeter, that's going to come in at $26, and that one is anywhere from like 34 to 35 grams with the wires.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a couple grams heavier here for the Farouk motor.
So what you're saying is that the FPV cycle 25 millimeter is similar in diameter, but a little bit taller and larger in volume, but substantially lighter, like 4 grams lighter.
Yeah, 2 to 4 grams lighter based on wire and stuff.
Okay. I think Farouk's is a Unibel that may contribute. Unibels are usually a little heavier, but more durable. Anyway, interesting motor from Farouk FPV. Another interesting motor is the iFlight Zing 2, which just keeps coming back. It's like, I kind of want to call it the Honda Civic of mini quad motors, except it's a high performance motor. It's not like just a sort of bog standard daily driver, but it kind of is. It's $21, great performance, Unibel. It has everything you could ask for in like a $26 motor and is $22. Or disagree?
Yeah. No, that sounds about right to me. And this is the all black edition. So special version for the Nazgul Evoke.
Any super, super secret stealthy people out there who want blacked out motors, this is the one for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, other than that, it's just a Zing 2, which is a great motor at a great price. Honestly, Blunty, I mean, is there anything this motor doesn't have that, like a $26, the aluminum alloy, the bearing, is there anything it doesn't have?
Yeah, not offhand that I know of. So I think it's basically just a cheaper SKU for some of those higher end motors. Yeah, it doesn't have like fancy colors and stuff, if that's what you're looking for. I'm trying to think of anything else.
Yeah, good point.
It doesn't really have, because they typically charge more for the camos.
Mm-hmm.
I think the camos are just colors. So yeah.
There's one more new motor that's come out this month, and that is the Foxeer Datura. Actually, it's a whole line of motors in various sizes. And I certainly want to mention it because when a manufacturer like Foxeer puts out a new line of motors, we got to mention it. But I don't know if Foxeer has like a great history of making motors, Blunty.
It's kind of it definitely was interesting for me to see Foxeer release motors, especially at this price point. I think that's going to be the challenging thing for people. We just talked about what's the real.
I didn't even see the price yet.
What's the real difference between the Zing 2 and a higher price motor? And I think certainly we've got to look at that when we're talking about these motors.
Yeah.
Also, I think these are not Unibel. From what I can tell, there's a seam at the bottom of the bell there.
That's weird.
I've never seen a seam at the bottom of a bell, actually.
It does look like a Unibel at the top right here, that there's no seam here. Or maybe there is. Maybe you could just barely see a seam. I can't tell. I got to say, though, I think you're right. I hate to be really blunt, but I don't actually hate to be really blunt. $25 for this motor. I don't care how good it is. The best case scenario is it's as good as a Zing 2, and a Zing 2 is $22, so you should just buy that, which we know is a great motor. And the worst case scenario is It's a new motor from Foxeer. They OEM'd it out to somebody else. They potentially have cut corners. Who knows? It's an untested and could turn out to be worse than a Zing 2, in which case you just buy a Zing 2.
And they called these Datura. I think whoever made them was hallucinating.
That's good. That's good. Sorry, Foxeer, no offense, but the new kid on the block has something to prove, and
Sure.
you just have to come in at a lower price. I don't know why I would recommend these to anybody when you could get a Zing 2 for $22 instead. Stop making such good motors, iFlight. You're ruining the whole market for everyone else. Next up, we got some props we're going to show off today, Blunty. And
we're going big today. So typically we're looking at all kinds of different smaller props or different blade configurations and sizes from different companies. And to this month instead, what we have is four different cinelifter props.
Yeah, back in the day, there just weren't a lot of props for multi-rotors in this size class, the sort of 7 to 10 inch size class. And a lot of cinelifters and X-class pilots ended up using airplane props. Airplane props are not optimized to run at a wide range of RPMs. Airplanes usually go to mid throttle or 2/3 throttle or whatever, and they just stay there. Because if airplanes go too slow, they just fall out of the air. But multi-rotors, the motors are often going to very different RPM ranges, and airplane props are just not optimized for that. So it's great to see companies like GEMFan and HQ coming out with new props in the 7 to 9 inch category.
Yeah, I think for anybody who's looking for these style props, it'll be good to see some reviews. I know that previously there were on and off issues with these larger props with balance and like molds and stuff. I think Kebab was testing some and saw some issues at some point. So, maybe buy a couple sets and make sure they're working great for you. But it is cool to see a lot of new options in 7, 8, and 9 inch.
And it is neat to see them experimenting with different materials like glass reinforced nylon. Here's a polycarbonate prop. Really, really good to see this kind of thing. So if you fly cinelifters, consider whether some of these may be right for you.
Next up, we're going to take a look at some batteries and battery chargers. First up, we've got Ace has the new Imars 3 Pro, an AC, built-in AC smart balance charger. And for comparison, we'll take a look at the 608 AC, tried and true. Actually, I own that smart battery charger as well. A 50-watt AC that also has the DC option for 200.
Now, when I first saw this Ace charger, I thought this is an old style 4-button charger. Like, I can see the interface. This interface has been around for 10 years, at least. And what it looks like Ace has done is they've just sort of housed it in a high-quality case. And at a price of $60 for a 100-watt 10-amp charger, I'm like, but then I realized it has a built-in AC power supply. You don't need a separate power supply. And that actually makes it kind of a good deal. What's the specs on the 608 AC?
So the 608 AC is only going to be 50 watts on that AC power, so that's going to be kind of a limiting factor there. However, the 608 AC kind of has a special feature where you basically can detach the AC section and then get 200 watts with the DC power from an external power supply. So it's kind of it can kind of be better or worse for a new pilot. Maybe if you're looking for not too much extra power, but maybe later you could step up. In my case, I actually use this 608 AC, and I converted an old Xbox power supply and plugged that in there, and that worked perfectly. I didn't have to buy anything new, so that was a cool way to step up.
Yeah, the interface on the 608 AC is a modern iSDT interface, so it's just going to be so much simpler, easier to use, and more intuitive, and more feature-packed. But we have to acknowledge that the Ace charger has basically twice the charging capacity for a slightly lower price, which is certainly going to appeal to a lot of people.
So next up, let's look at some radios. And first up, we've got a T-Pro, the Jumper T-Pro. I think people have been waiting for this one for a little while. This has got the internal Express LRS 2.4 gigahertz, and it's got 1 watt inside of there. It's a true internal module, so it runs on the internal, similar to the Zorro.
1 watt Express LRS, certainly always nice to have more output power. I would argue that 250 milliwatts, which is what you find in a lot of other radios, is fine. But if you want to run a ceramic antenna, which costs you a little bit of signal strength, and you want to run at 500 hertz, which costs you a little bit of range, and you just want to sort of push everything to the edge, that extra little bit of output power certainly does matter. First question we always got to ask, Blunty, did this go through the Express LRS devs for their sort of blessing before it was released?
Yeah, and so the answer to that is no, it did not. There was some like kind of back and forth talk a little bit, but basically proper hardware was not sent on time. And then there was basically a public complaint by the Express LRS dev team. And then that wasn't super resolved, but they did get shipped hardware by Jumper, and Jumper is talking to them in private channels. So
the question then is, like I've said that the Express LRS hardware that has problems, I've just said, just don't buy it. This doesn't have any sort of outstanding known deal breaker problems. And therefore,
I have heard, so there are two issues I would like to mention. One is that I personally and a couple other people have seen a lot of stick jitter when they've turned up the internal module up to 1 watt. I'm not sure if that's something that's fixable or something that's on everybody's radio, but I know that I can clearly see that in both the USB output and on my receiver if I do put it all the way up to 1 watt. So I talked to Jumper about that a little bit, but yeah, I haven't seen any resolution on that, and that is possible that could be fixed with some small hardware mod or something too. And the other thing is that there is possibly an issue with baud rate. So a lot of these newer radios can go up to 3.75 or 5.25 million bauds, like megabaud. It looks like early reports on this one, and from my testing, so 1.8 is stable, but no higher than that is. So it won't be a huge deal breaker, won't really change anything fundamental. It's like a half a millisecond of latency difference between being able to go up on that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is just, do you like this as a radio? And I've got a full review of the Jumper T Pro on my channel that you're welcome to check out if you're trying to figure out if this is the right radio for you. But for the time being, I think this is the only radio with 1 watt Express LRS internal. Everybody else has to put a module in their radio to get that. So that's pretty slick. Okay. And then next up, we've got 2 radios from PyroDrone. The RadioMaster TX16S Max. It looks like RadioMaster is doing custom versions with just about everybody. This is their PyroDrone version. It looks like it has custom color scheme, of course. It has AG01 gimbals, very slick. Carbon fiber faceplate and black leather grips, $379. I guess you're basically just getting a RadioMaster TX16S Max with AG01 gimbals and custom color scheme. That's basically all this is. Or can you currently buy a RadioMaster TX16S with AG01 gimbals in it already, other than this?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe this is the first offering for that I know of.
Gotcha. So if I were buying a RadioMaster TX16S Max today, this would be the one this is my, like, I know they've got the metal faceplate, like the Minchan Kim edition, and I'm not 100% sure that metal faceplate is actually a plus. I'm still on the fence. Like, a couple people I know who fly with it said that it gets super cold in the winter, and they prefer the plastic faceplate. So this might be the one to get if you want a super premium TX16S at a decent price. Well, Blunty, every month there are so many new things coming out in the world of Express LRS that it feels like we have a whole segment of the new product roundup dedicated just to Express LRS. Let's try to move through this. Not everybody's into Express LRS. Wait a minute, Blunty. This is not an Express LRS product. Let's get this one out of the way.
So first up, you've got the Crossfire Nano RX Pro. So it's been a little while since we've seen a new, entry from TBS, and this is that. So basically, your old Nano RX typically has, I believe, it's 25 milliwatts or somewhere in there of telemetry output. So that means like what the RX is going to send back from the RX to your radio to give you telemetry back. So you get, information about the quad, information about the receiver link and stuff. And then also that's how you get like dynamic power and dynamic packet rate and things like that. And so the RX Pro is basically them adding a power amplifier on the board so you can get 500 milliwatts of telemetry power. So you can get much longer range on your telemetry back to your radio.
And just to be clear, because I've seen a lot of confusion about this product from sort of normal people, this does not in any way affect your control range. Your control range will still be the same with this receiver as with any other Crossfire receiver. But with a normal Crossfire receiver, if you go far enough, there will be a point where you lose telemetry while still having control, and this extends that. So who is this really for, Blunty?
Yeah, I would say this is mainly for like, people who really care about telemetry. So typically maybe like long-range wing pilots or plane pilots. Somebody who's doing long range on a quad that wants that return to home, and you just want to make sure you're maintaining that link to your radio in case you lose video or in case you have some issue like that and you can't see your OSD.
That's the kind of thing this would be really good for. For typical pilots, the standard Nano is fine. You don't need this. All right, that's the Crossfire. Now we've got some new products, Express ELRS products, and I'm going to save this beta FPV for last. But let's start with this, Blunty.
All right. First up, we've got the JHEMCU F405. It's a 5 amp ESC with the Express ELRS 2.4 gigahertz integrated. Basically, just JHEMCU's 1S or 2S AIO entry into the Express ELRS integrated flight controllers.
For little 1S toothpick quads, right? Oh, yeah, 2 or 2S.
Like little whoop. Something like that. 5 amp doesn't give you a lot of headroom on the ESC, so I got to keep it low.
So you probably wouldn't be running 3-inch props, you think? You'd want like a 10 or 12 amp ESC for that?
Yeah, it's right on the edge. Yeah, I would probably want to go to that 12 amp kind of area for that 3-inch traditional toothpick.
So if this is for tiny whoops, then does it have motor connectors? There's a solder on the motors.
It looks like, just solder pads.
Okay.
Look kind of oddly arranged there, but I think they're
I agree.
Yeah.
Gonna need a pad layout diagram. But 5 amp ESC, tiny whoop flight controller with Express ELRS built in, not bad. $71 hurts my heart, but that's the world we live in today. Well, this product confuses the shit out of me, Blunty. So FreeSky has a sister, let's call it a sister brand, Vantac, which makes FreeSky R9 hardware. And then one day, Vantac started selling Express ELRS hardware, which we believe is just an R9 module with Express ELRS flash to it. Fine. Now, DarwinFPV is selling a Vantac Express ELRS module, and I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, for whatever reason, they're also charging more money for it, which I think is going to be the big issue for folks. Because if you can source the other Vantac module, or honestly any module at this point, a lot of them are going to be cheaper than this price. But the Vantac 2.4 Express ELRS is coming in at about $26, and so this is going to be $38. So it looks like you're basically just paying for the Darwin name, which I'm not sure about.
Right. I mean, I don't have anything against DarwinFPV. I don't really know. I mean, they've been around for a little while now. I haven't heard any super big complaints. The DarwinFPV Baby Ape is pretty good. It feels like think about the DarwinFPV Baby Ape quadcopter. It had like motors from the old Baby Hawk, right? And they just like sourced a lot of those old motors and put them. It feels like they're part spinning stuff. And then maybe that's what happened here. They sourced a bunch of these Vantac modules and they sort of part spinned them and installed Express ELRS on them.
Well, something to remember though is that these would have to be purchased for this purpose because it's a different chip, right? The 900 is the R9 conversion.
Oh,
but the
you're
2.4
right.
have to be new. So.
This can't be a reflashed R9 because it's in 2.4 gigahertz. That means DarwinFPV made some kind of a deal with FreeSky / Vantac.
Yeah.
Okay.
To white label or whatever, to these modules. So
FreeSky makes good hardware. If we assume that FreeSky manufactured these and DarwinFPV just flashed them, it could be one of the better built Express ELRS modules out there.
I just I just think at that point you're going to be looking at like HaloRC or somewhere to buy the Vantac version and get it for $12 less. So
Yeah. Okay. DarwinFP, what are you doing? All right. Cool. We've got here new Express ELRS receiver. What makes this stand out, Blunty?
So this is Happymodel's entry into the PWM receivers. So we've had a couple different options show up. I think Maytech made one, and Happymodel's hopping in with their own version of the PWM receiver to make it a little bit easier for folks who need that.
Nice. 5 channels of PWM output that you can wire straight to servos, basically is the gist?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. You need more than 5 channels. This isn't the receiver for you. And then lastly, we've got this. Now, Blunty, I would say the sort of gold standard for Express ELRS modules today is 1 watt of solid output power, a built-in screen, backpack support, and what else am I missing? Wi-Fi. They all have Wi-Fi.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So on paper, this Beta FPV module ticks all the boxes, but I have to say, I just happened to have been visiting Stingy recently, and we were flying together, and he was doing a little video where he range tested some modules, and I don't want to spoil his video too much, but this thing was not working right. It didn't have enough range, and eventually he and Beta FPV together concluded that it was overheating. And when you turned it up to 1 watt, it wasn't going to 1 watt. I don't think anybody knew whether that was just his module or whether it was a defect in the module as a whole. But the bottom line is, surprise, surprise, a piece of Beta FPV hardware had a weird problem and didn't perform as expected. And in this day and age, when there's things like the Happymodel Pro module, which as far as we can tell is just rock solid, I feel like that's just like, okay, I'll pass. I don't know. You're not going to stick up for him? Argue with me? Okay.
Not in this case.
Okay. All right. Well, we got one more section. Then we're going to do the giveaway of the month. Start thinking about what we're going to give away this month. Do we call this one just sort of a random grab bag of stuff that didn't fit anywhere else, but still was too important just to ignore?
Well, first up, we've got some new antennas. The first one is the Lumenier Axii HD2. So this is a sequel to the traditional Axii HDs that we've had for a little while. The patches you pop right on the front of the of your DJI goggles, and these are a little bit more stylish. So you get some different clear or transparent, I guess, colors that are there for you.
You can see through them. I'm not actually sure I see that as a plus, to be honest with you, but some people will like it. It's nice that the antennas are mounted on the inside instead of being stuck to the outside. It's just a little more trim, if you will. The big question everybody's going to ask is, how does this compare to the iFlight Crystal?
Gotcha. Yeah, these claim just a little bit of an improvement over a V1. So at least compared to the V1 Axii HD, they claim a higher gain and then a wider field of view. Yeah. So and then 15 degrees of up tilt are automatically built into their antenna mount, so that kind of helps you aim a little better.
Oh, that's actually really cool. You don't have to hold your head up like this. If you just hold your head more naturally, it's got a little up tilt. That's like a actual feature that makes it stand out compared to the Crystal. Crystal looks nicer, no doubt.
Yes.
And that's available in both a kit with the Omni antennas, the Axii one as well. This pricing does not include the Omni antennas, but it is available in a kit with the Omni antennas. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we've got another new antenna, the VAS Avenger. Now, this is an analog video antenna. Is that right?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, obviously could be either, but mainly the goal is to be an analog video antenna. They're claiming 12.5 dB long range antenna, and then trying to make it light as well, so it can easily fit on the goggle.
Yeah, that's the problem with sort of once you get past about 10 dB of gain, most of the antenna designs get a little bit heavy, bulky, and unwieldy. And there's sort of no way around that because higher gain antennas have to be bigger most of the time. But 12 dB antenna designed to be mounted directly on the goggles for sort of longer range and longer penetration. And VAS Video Aerial Systems makes good stuff.
Yeah, they say it's basically like a Crosshair Extreme, but they like put that parasitic waveguide you see there kind of on it to make it a little bit better gain and axial ratio.
Okay. Next up, we've got the Newbeedrone Practice Solder Board. I've covered the Mute FPV Practice Solder Board before, but the problem with it was that you have to order his directly from PCBWay, and it's expensive and sort of difficult to buy for some people. Here's a practice solder board from Newbeedrone for $5. And not a lot to say there, but a great way to learn how to solder.
Yeah, I think the comparative one is Diatone Mix one, the Diatone Mamba practice solder board. So whichever of those kind of works out best from where you're ordering.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. Is that the same one? I don't think that's the same one. I think they have a new one. I could be wrong. I think they have a new one based on Mute FPV's design, but I'm not finding it anywhere, so there you go. I like that the Newbeedrone one has like these edge pads similar to ESC. The Diatone one doesn't seem to have all of the same pads you would find on a flight controller, whereas the Newbeedrone one seems to be more in that direction. And then lastly, Blunty, we have this weird thing that I am having trouble understanding. It's a tool to help you remove T-mount props from motors. I don't understand. You just grab the prop and twist it off, right? That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, so that can work for a while. But one of the things that I think a lot of people find is like one of the reasons your T-mount prop is sticking on that on the motor is because your T-mount prop grabs the shaft. And so what will happen is it locks the shaft in so hard that you'll grab the bell and you'll try to twist. And then when you're doing the twist to kind of get it off and to pry it off, then you end up like pulling the bell or separating the bell from the shaft or stuff like that. So it looks like GEMFan has created a solution to hopefully help you get these off. And it's essentially sort of like a puller device. And they show here, basically you take the screws off of your T-mount prop, just like you would if you're trying to remove the prop. But instead of just trying to pull it off, you put on their screws instead. You put them on a couple turns so they stick out.
You like screw them down in so they grab the plastic of the prop.
Yeah, and then you use this puller device and basically push it onto the prop, and you see he unscrews it so the shaft moves up in the device. And then he screws down and the shaft pushes onto the shaft of the motor and helps push the prop up. So you're not doing any damage to the motor.
So you're only pressing on the shaft. You're not pressing on the bell or anything like that. I guess there's someone out there who's going to be like, finally, I've needed this forever. But so far, I've always been successful just pinching and twisting. And how much is it?
Yeah. $9.
$9. All right. Well, if that's you, then this is the tool for you.
This is a good little toss in the cart thing.
Yeah. There you go. All right, Blunty, that is going to bring us to the end, but don't go because you're about to find out which product this month we are going to give away and how to enter the giveaway. And we got to figure, we always struggle, Blunty, to find the best balance of like what people are going to love, but it's not going to be too expensive so we can give away more than like a few of them. Let's see. What do we got this month? What stands out?
Well, a couple of options I'm thinking of. I think the obvious one is the HDZero 1-watt freestyle VTX. That would be pretty cool to give a few of those away and get the HDZero system out there.
The only problem I have with that, I agree, I would totally do that. But if you don't have a receiver, then you can't use it. And you can't buy the receiver module today. It's just not available as far as I know. So you could buy the Scout HD goggles, but that seems like... Maybe do enough people have HDZero already that there's a good chance the person who wins would be like, yeah, I already have it. Now I get this VTX.
Well, what's the cost? $100.
Yeah.
Why don't we do 1-watt VTX or Apex?
The Apex is, I mean, I think most people would be glad to get that Apex frame.
And stuff like that's cool because it's like, I know, at least for me, it's hard for me to spend $94 on a frame. I would never buy that for myself, but it'd be cool to have. All
right. I'm sold. So we're going to do a giveaway. Your choice of the prize, either the HDZero 1-watt VTX or the new Apex frame. If you always wondered how good is a $100 frame, today might be your day to find out. Or if you've got HDZero already and you're looking to get that VTX, you can decide. The way to enter the giveaway, down in the video description, there is a link. It is a link to a Google form. That is how you enter the giveaway. You click that link and you leave your information on the Google form. I will announce the winners. Typically, I give 3 or 4 days for people to enter the giveaway, and then I'll announce the winners in a pinned comment on this video. So if you look down there and there's no pinned comment yet, I haven't drawn the winners yet. And I'll also email the winners with to let them know that they've won. How many are we going to give away? $100 each. Let's do 4. We'll do 4 winners. Your pick. Cool. That's going to do it, Blunty. Another month, another big group of new products. Thank you so much, man, for sitting here with me for 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Always happy to do it, man.
That's going to do it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Happy flying.
Later, guys.
All right. You guys, I don't know where I am, and I don't know what's going to happen, but if I don't make it out of this, I just want to know that you subscribe to my channel, or maybe join my Patreon, or click one of these videos I picked out for you.